Nicole, tell me your thoughts on sort of getting the meat of an agent development effort going.
I think one of the things we look at as we're building out these agents is what are we spend a lot of time with our customers gathering requirements. I mean, just like any good SDLC, we want to understand that business problem, which we already sort of talked about. But then we dive into how are those users, the personas we're targeting to use this agent, how do they solve that problem today? How do they look at that analysis workflow, for instance? Do they have a typical workflow or hierarchy that they will follow as they're analyzing it? Because we want to make sure, however we design that agent fits well into that workflow and actually serves up the answers to their questions and allows them to drill down in a way that's familiar to them. So there's a lot of design that goes into the front end of that. And that's where I'll hand it off to Riley for this next point, because as we design that, one of the things that we do is we learn the context that we're going to inject into the prompts that deliver that user experience in the workflow. And I know Riley spends a lot of his time, I like to say, beating our heads into the wall with building that context out in some of these agents. But the key thing is that is what delivers a user experience that gets adopted, that is useful to the people we're targeting.
Yeah.
All right, Riley, she teed you up there.
All right.
Dive a little bit into that context side of the story.
Yeah, happy to. So I absolutely agree with all of that. One of the things that can make this a little challenging is when you go to a business user, they've never been asked, for most business users at least, they've never been asked to explicitly detail every sort of thought process or bit of context that they use in their job. And those small details that they take for granted are the things that can make or break a good agent. So as we're implementing, we start with the high level, here's the math we use to do this, start working on it. But then if an agent potentially doing analysis doesn't understand this one bit of logic that other business user just has always taken for granted and assumes everyone else also takes for granted, the agent certainly does not take that for granted. And so it will fail at that task. So there's definitely a bit of interpersonal, research into the human that you're working for to gather that bit of context that can make an agent ultimately successful.
Mike, reactions to that on the context side? I mean,
Yeah.
this harks back a little bit to
Yep.
our discussion of it's not unlike a new employee and all the things you need to communicate to that new employee.
Yeah. So I'll use this moment to step back for a second because I think this is interesting. So this week we lost, as a species, we lost a really important person, which was Jane Goodall. I don't know if you guys saw that news. And so what Jane Goodall did that was so fascinating was understand how these primate societies work out in the wild. Now she didn't have a textbook that said this is how you go about finding out what primates do. She just went. She just went and stayed there and watched, right? And so back to the Sam Altman moment, that deep learning moment, that's what the LLMs are doing. They have just been watching what we do by way of looking at the internet, right? That
Almost
is
sounds disturbing, but okay, keep
well,
going.
but so Jane Goodall learned how these primate societies work, and there's a meta layer to it. She taught us how to do that, how to go about this whole new way of learning about nature, of learning what's in this field work that she did, and that's exactly what the LLMs are doing to discover new knowledge, right? So it's just fascinating now to hear Riley talking about, okay, when I'm going to go teach an agent to act correctly in a workflow for a workplace, I need to know what the people used to do. I need to know what the people expect, right? It turns out that really the source of the answer is the real world. Every business out there that's been running for 10, 20, 30, 100 years, what they're doing now, that is the source of truth. That is the ground truth. That is how things should work. The agents are there because of the work that Riley is doing. The agents are there to make that process faster, smoother, better in some ways, but not to revolutionize the way that the business is done, because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of the agents, is to make it better. And they're only going to do that because you observe what's happening and introduce them in a way that makes sense to the LLM and it makes sense to the person.